does that? Like, I would fall asleep, or I would get so into the book that I wouldn't go to work. Welcome to The Localist, a conversation with local makers and independent entrepreneurs. I'm your host, author of the Localist book, and former small business owner, Carrie Rollwagen. So today I wanted to talk about building a morning routine. Not everyone who is successful has a morning routine, but I think the internet would tell you differently. It does seem like a lot of people who at least post blogs and social media about being successful like to brag about their morning routines. And I guess that's kind of what I'm doing here, but I have a little bit of a different twist on it. So the thing is, not everybody who's successful has a morning routine, but a lot of people are. A lot of times, if you are a high performer, or if you're trying to reach a certain goal or anything like that, setting yourself up for success in the morning, getting some of those things done in the morning that you actually really want to spend your day having done, can be really useful. So I think it is a really helpful tool. But I don't want to tell you, here is a list of things that you have to have in your morning routine. In case you couldn't tell by my sarcasm 10 seconds ago, I don't like it when people do that. I feel like a lot of people have a very strict list. You see people either posting that or posting social media about, they go and do a run, and they have a green juice, and they read a chapter of a self-help book and all of this stuff. And it is awesome, and if something like that works for you, that's great. But I think it also can look exhausting for people who are just trying to set something up and trying to be a little more intentional in the morning. So instead of telling you exactly what my morning routine looks like, or because actually mine changes a lot, but I also think that's not useful. What I want to talk about is what are the elements that a successful morning routine can include. And then you can think through how could I put my own spin on this and use it to reach the goal that I'm trying to reach. Okay, so before I get into exactly the elements, the building blocks of a routine, I think it is important to say that one of the things that has been really successful for me with a morning routine is making sure it is routine. Okay, that sounds silly, but essentially what we're trying to do is do things, especially at the beginning, in the same order every day. That helps our brain turn it into more of a habit, and that is really helpful in a morning routine. A lot of times our brains don't work, I don't know, my brain doesn't work as well in the morning, so I'm not thinking as clearly, especially when I first get up. We haven't had coffee yet, that kind of stuff. So the more actual routine we can give and the more habit-based we can make this, the better. Because then it's you don't really have to think about what you're doing next. You just kind of do it. And you're not using up those stores of willpower and decision-making in the morning and not having them left for the rest of the day. So I do think it's important, especially for the first 2 weeks, to try to lock in a regular, I do these things in this order every morning. Now, the caveat to that is the first few days, the first 2 or 3 days, you are going to find, I thought it would be good to do this first, and actually it's good to do that first. So I would say the first 2 or 3 days, you're kind of working through it, what actually works for you. And then once you have a good order of things, really try to do them in the same exact order for a couple of weeks. Now, I mean this is when you work out, this is when you eat breakfast, that kind of thing. I don't mean you have to do every single motion in the same order. But whatever you want to do. The other part, I think, of making this a habit, besides doing it in the same order, is also involving as many senses as possible. So there's this book called The Power of Habit that talks about habit forming that I really like. A lot of people lately have also talked about Atomic Habits, which also has really great stuff in it. But from The Power of Habit, I learned that it is helpful for our brains to include as many senses as possible when we're trying to establish a routine. So think about what are you seeing? What are you smelling? What are you hearing? What are you tasting? Like, those are the things that if they're done the same way, it kind of will like get your brain into like, it'll help it understand, oh, we're doing our morning routine now. It doesn't mean you can't get there without including, you don't have to include every single sense, but do kind of think about, is there something I could change where I'm seeing the same thing in the morning? I mean, that can be as simple as like turning on the light in your bathroom. It doesn't have to be complicated. Can I hear this same thing every morning? That kind of thing. That'll just help you lock that habit in a lot more quickly. Okay, so what should your morning routine include? My first thing is actually related to the senses, and that is a playlist. So a lot of the senses, like, I think it's hard to think about smell in the morning unless I'm like counting breakfast, but I'm not really going to light a candle most mornings because I'm not home long enough to like let that candle burn. So I don't include every single thing, but sound is a really easy one to include. And also music can really boost our mood emotionally. So I think it's really helpful to have a playlist that's kind of setting the mood that you want to set. And I think that's going to change depending on what you want out of that routine. Sometimes I am just in a mode that I am like goal setting. I'm wanting to drive towards something, and my playlist, I'm not going to share them. They're very embarrassing, but my playlist will have songs about like surviving, driving forward, like, you know, like let's go. And then sometimes I'm just a little sad and I want a playlist that is kind of like reminding me things are also good in the world. Like, you can be happy. Like, you know, there's a level where you need more than a playlist for that. So, you know, talk to someone if you need to. But there is also a level that it's just like, you just kind of got the blues. It's not full-blown depression. It's nice to just have a playlist to kind of like pep you up. The Snoop Dogg affirmation song for children is on that playlist. It's like really cheesy stuff. But the point is, it doesn't matter what's on your playlist. Just like think of it specifically. And again, for those first couple of weeks, listen to it in the same order every day so that it locks that habit in. You'll find that like as soon as you like pop in your headphones or whatever and start that first song, it'll actually like immediately start your brain thinking like, oh, I know what we're doing here. Like, let's go, let's get going. And it can be really, really useful. So I think have some kind of playlist. I do think it's important to incorporate movement. Now, if that is a big workout, great. If you like to work out in the morning, ideally, I like to work out in the morning because my brain isn't working enough in the morning to talk myself out of it. Like in the afternoon, I have lots of great ideas for reasons I wouldn't work out. But I do like to work out in the morning, but there have been some times that's just not happening for me. Like, I would actually dread working out so much that I wouldn't get out of bed. So at that time, now this is hard for me because I tend to be like a person who wants to like really go for it and achieve and all that stuff. But I found it was actually better to pull back and just do like 5 or 10 minutes of stretching. That is movement. That is enough to get like, you know, your blood flowing, to wake up, to feel better throughout the day, just to get something going. That is enough. And actually what's happened for me is when I pulled back and did that for a couple of months, it actually morphed into where now I'm actually doing a full workout. And I'm sure there will come a time again where I'm dreading those and I need to go back to just a little bit of stretching. So it doesn't matter if you're like, maybe you're doing like a really long run or a hard hit workout or going to a class, or maybe you're just stretching. But I do think some kind of movement in the morning is important just to wake up your body, and that also helps to wake up your mind. Okay, I also think reflection can be a really good part of a morning routine. Now, okay, my pet peeve of all the Instagrammers and TikTokers posting their ideal morning routines, I feel like a lot of times I see them, it's like a dim room and they have a cup of coffee and they're reading like a chapter of a self-help book. And who does that? Like, I would fall asleep or I would get so into the book that I wouldn't go to work. I have done that. I go eventually, but I go late. So to me, personally, and again, if that works for you, go for it. That's a good form of reflection if it does. But don't feel like you have to be plowing through a book in the morning. Now, if you have something that's like a short kind of meditation or maybe like a couple of pages, that can be good. There's a reason a lot of people do their devotions in the morning, because they'll have like the Bible, and a lot of books of scripture are divided into just smaller segments. So you can read a couple paragraphs basically. I think in general, that's probably a more reasonable pace if you're wanting to read in the morning. There's some great books on this. I think I'll link it in the show notes, but I think it's called The Daily Stoic is pretty good. And it's like really short little bursts. There's this book on creativity by Rick Rubin that is like 2, 3, 5 pages long chapters, like something like that is great. I really digress there. But I wouldn't say I'm going to plow through a whole book. I do think it's also helpful to do a little either meditation or journaling as part of this. Again, this can be something big. Like sometimes I do this practice called morning pages, where you write 3 pages, just like stream of consciousness, immediately after you get up. I love it. It can help me find real clarity, but I don't do it all the time because it takes me like half an hour. So it's not always a part of my routine. Sometimes I just do a gratitude practice of writing 5 things I'm grateful for, which, by the way, I've tried doing that at night when most people do it. It doesn't work for me at all. So that actually works better in the morning. You can write just like a couple things you're grateful for as your reflection. You can write a couple of intentions for the day. It could be a to-do list. It doesn't have to be complicated, but I do think just taking a little time to reflect can be really helpful. And then also think about the way you're fueling yourself. So, and if you can have breakfast, you can not have breakfast, like either one is fine. I find that it's really important for me to actually have a breakfast. Having that protein in the morning really helps my like anxiety to stay down-ish. It helps me to be not as hungry throughout the day. I actually find that when I have a big breakfast, I'm just as hungry in the morning as I would otherwise be, but then I'm actually like more full at the end of the day, which for me, I thought was interesting. But whether or not you have a big breakfast, you have a lot of protein, or you have something small, grab and go, or you have no breakfast, just make sure what you're fueling yourself with, you're doing it intentionally. Because you don't want to have a great morning routine and then be stuck and be like, oh, what am I going to grab to eat? And then you're hungry and whatever. So that is something that I do think is important in building a morning routine. So I hope that this has been helpful and that it's given you some kind of, I just wanted to give like really loose building blocks that you can like kind of find some specific things that you can put into those. But I do think including a good playlist, some movement, good fuel for the day, and taking time for reflection are good practices for any morning routine. I hope this has been helpful. The Localist is brought to you by Infomedia Studios. We are literally sitting in an Infomedia studio. So if you need help podcasting or with photo or video work, hit up infomedia.com and fill out that contact form. Mention the Localist and maybe they'll give you a discount. I don't know. I'd say probably. I don't have a code or anything, but they are a sponsor. All right, so the Localist podcast is written and produced by me, Carrie Rollwagen. Our showrunner is Jen Tuck. No, that's not right. Our showrunner is Taylor Davis. Our outreach manager is Jen Tucker. And our marketing and promotions manager is Elena Harmond. You can find show notes about this topic and more at carrierollwagen.com. And come find me on social media at CRollwagen. So until next time, here's to thinking global by acting local and putting small shops before big bucks.